the recording. All right, tonight's lesson is called Whistle While You Work. We're going to talk about attitudes at work, why we work, what the Bible says about work, and all of the above. So our first verse tonight, I will just share with you from the New Living Translation. It says, lazy people want much but get little, but those who work hard will prosper. What do you think about that?
That's true.
That's true.
Very true.
Okay.
I
So-
want a lot of things, but unless I'm getting out there and I'm doing something and or whatever, it doesn't make things appear.
That's true. That's true. And none of us have won the lottery recently or been gotten a huge inheritance or anything like that. So we can't rely on that. That means we need to work or be associated with somebody else that's working to have the funds to survive on. Now, Solomon also said something else in Ecclesiastes 10:10. So if somebody can read that for us.
I'm looking for it. Can't find it in-
Ecclesiastes. Yeah, it's right after Proverbs.
If the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success.
Okay. What is that talking about and how does that have anything to do with work?
What was the, because I didn't understand and my phone's acting kind of screwy.
All right, Solomon said, if the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success.
You could still do a job if your axe is dull, but you just need to have more success to be able to, or more skill to have the success that you need.
Okay, so how does that fit in with work?
Because we have skills.
If
We
we
have skills. Okay.
if we wanna be successful at work, we can look for how to sharpen ourselves, like in certain things that we might lack. Take
Exactly.
courses or test. Like I have to take a test.
Exactly, exactly. We don't want to work harder. We want to work smarter, which might mean that we might need to get some training like Kyle's doing. A little education goes a long ways, and it doesn't always have to be a degree type of education. It can also be just learning new skills to, as this verse would suggest, sharpen your axe.
It's also good if your
Gotta
teacher doesn't
switch.
talk about nonsense.
I gotta switch my speaker. All right, somebody say something because I'm not sure I've got sound.
Something.
That's it. My little boom box died, so I had to switch the speaker. All right. Any idea how much difference having a college degree makes in your salary compared to somebody that just has a high school degree? And this is based on 2003 values, so it's even more different now.
Tens of thousands of dollars.
How many thousands of dollars do you think?
I would probably say $10,000 to $12,000 a year.
Probably like, yeah, I would say $10,000 to $20,000 at an entry level, but
Mhm.
it depends what they went to college for.
It does depend on what they went for.
$1,000.
All right, in 2003, average income by education level, and this is across the US. Somebody that just had a high school diploma, if they were a male $33,000 a year, female $21,600 a year. If they had a bachelor's degree, male $63,000 a year, female $38,500. So about $30,000 difference in 2003.
Mhm.
And I think that difference has only increased since. Plus, there was also the men versus women pay discrepancy that still continues. And if you get higher degrees, obviously it goes up. So a little education goes a long way. And if you don't even get a high school diploma, you know, you're losing probably $10,000 a year at that level. So it does pay to go to school, but it doesn't have to be a high level degree. There are jobs that don't require that. But some of it also depends on being in the right place at the right time. A lot of career success depends on where you're at a particular point in time and who you get to know, because connections and networks are pretty huge. Solomon talks about that in Proverbs 22:29, and I'll read it from the Message because it says it in just real plain English. Observe people who are good at their work. Skilled workers are always in demand and admired. They don't take a back seat to anyone. So it's also how well you do your job. You know, are you putting your 100% into the job? Because that's going to be noticed. It's how you interact with others. That's also going to be noticed. So back in 2003, the top paying jobs overall, according to careerbuilder.com, and this has probably changed, but some of these may still remain pretty high. They require at least a 4-year college degree, but the top paying jobs, physicians and surgeons, 147,000 a year, aircraft pilots, 133,000 a year, chief executives, $116,000 a year, electrical and electronic engineers, 112,000, lawyers, about 100,000, dentists, about 90,000, pharmacists, 85,000. And, you know, it goes on. And computer and information system managers, that one's bumped up, I know. That one is in huge demand now. So those are all some of the top paying jobs. Some of the fastest growing occupations are things like medical assistants, network systems and data communication analysts, physician's assistants, social and human service assistants, home health aides, medical records people, physical therapists, computer software people of all kinds. Those are fast growing ones. Your top paying jobs, if you don't have a high school degree, are industrial production managers, bailiffs, correction officers, jailers, drafters, construction managers, and electricians. So those are some places to look, depending on what you have and what your goal is. And the Bible also talks about some other aspects, preparing for new opportunities. Look at Ecclesiastes 11:6.
You said 11:6?
Yes, Ecclesiastes 11:6.
Okay, sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let not your hands be idle. For you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well.
Okay. So it says, don't put all of your money earning opportunities in one basket, so to speak. Develop some hobbies or study some new information that there might be new career opportunities for you, or maybe earning some money from your hobby. But just like we were supposed to diversify our investments, we need to diversify our income sources. But we need to be careful because working multiple jobs can also do something that's not so good. Can create work-life balance problems, not spending enough time for ourselves, for our families, for our faith, interacting with God, etc. So we need to be careful. And Proverbs 23:4 talks about that.
Proverbs 23:4.
Mhm.
Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness.
Careful, don't wear yourself out trying to get rich. Remember, riches are just kind of vanity, Solomon says. They're chasing after the wind. So the next part of our thinking about work is, when did you last whistle while you were doing your work, whether it be housework, kid work, work? When were you doing your work and happy and satisfied doing it?
Over 15 years ago. When
Okay,
I was in high school working at the bookstore. So actually 20 something.
okay.
I
So working in a
enjoyed what I
bookstore.
did. I enjoyed what I did today. Like it was good to get out of the house and do something without distractions. But I would say the last, quote, real job that I worked that was my absolute favorite was right before I started working in insurance, and it was working at Agway, a feed supply store.
Okay.
That is my all-time favorite job. I worked with people and talked to them about their animals, and that was a lot of fun.
So combining a couple of your interests. Okay.
Yeah.
Kathy's had a lot of jobs too, but the one that she liked the best was the year she got to work with insects where I work. She liked the people and she liked doing the insect work. She's done a lot of other stuff, but if you ask her, that's her favorite. How about you, Amanda? What's been your best experience in a job?
Sometimes I whistle at work, but because I'm working in automatic and I start whistling like worship songs.
Mhm.
I enjoyed my job a lot when I did it on a medical mission. What I do here, but on a medical mission. I was happy about that, and also I don't know, when I train people.
Training people or also ministering to them
Or
spiritually at the
church.
same time?
The same time, yeah, at church when I'm with the kids this Sunday that
Mhm.
I had the kids class. That was what I like to do the best, the most.
Mhm. And it can ebb and flow. You know, part of it is having goals that you're reaching for within the job that you have, knowing that there's another step you can take. There's something that's going to challenge you. There's something that you can advance your career some way. When you get to a place kind of like I'm at, it's harder to see what that next step is, because I've reached what they call journeyman level or senior scientist, whatever. So for me, motivating myself in my work is a little bit harder than it used to be, because I don't see what another step would be. I see retirement out 7 years down the road or whatever, but it doesn't help me motivate in writing the papers or dealing with the stuff that I don't like to deal with. So I have to often pray about it, and I have to ask God, what purpose do you have me working where I'm at? I need to have him impart to me why he's got me there doing what I'm doing, because that's how I find my happiness in the job. So I'm trying a few different things at work. I'm in part of an official mentoring program now, and I've got a mentee that I meet with virtually once a week. She's got a lot of issues, but turns out she's also a believer, which it helps in mentoring her. She's autistic, but extremely bright, but she has some trouble interacting with people. So we're going to be working on some people skills. So that kind of challenge is something that gives me something different in my job, that I kind of, something new that I like, a teaching moment, so to speak. And so this all plays back to what we talked about in lesson 1, that we all have God-given gifts and passions, and God has a purpose for us that he prepared for us before he created each one of us individually. And if we can find that and be working in that and be active in that passion, we can be happier doing God's work that he planned for us to do. And if you're having trouble trying to figure out what that is for you, the writer of the book that we've been looking at suggests the book called Finding the Career That Fits You. And this book is a workbook that includes some personality analyzing things and some skill assessment exercises, and maybe could give you some direction in a career path. So it's important to be industrious. It's important to be busy working. You know, there's, I don't know how many times, at least 14 verses that Solomon has in Proverbs about don't be a sluggard, you know, get busy working at whatever it is that God has you to do. And even though we are supposed to get busy working at whatever God has us to do, we need to be careful that we don't overwork. If we can, and we can't always, we should try to have Sundays off so that we can focus on God and spiritual issues. But in some jobs, that's not possible. But if we can't get a Sunday off, we need to still have downtime, rest time. So try to find that work-life balance. Don't sacrifice family or the other important things in life for money. And Solomon talks about this a little bit in Ecclesiastes 9:10. Somebody want to find that?
Nine, 10. It says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead where you are going, there is neither working nor planning nor knowledge nor wisdom.
All right. If your hand finds it to do it with all your might, because we're all headed towards end of this physical life that as we know it, and to spend time with God. So he says, get busy, don't be sluggard, do some kind of work.
But don't you think we're going to work in heaven?
Why would we?
Why wouldn't we?
Well, in Revelations, it talks about just praising God all the time, and heaven is basically being with God all the time for eternity.
I don't know. I guess my view is I can't fit my head around that, because to me there's always something there's always something.
Well,
So to just have one
Might
thing,
have a lot of stuff to do, but it's not gonna be work.
no, it's going to be praising God and that kind of,
Like plant your own garden, but it's not work.
yeah. I think we get hung up on work because we think that nothing's going to come free, because we've always been told that if it looks too good to be true, it is. And salvation and everything God offers is free with no
Yep.
strings attached. And
Yep.
that's hard for human beings to understand. And heaven is a no strings attached permanent situation with God, in his love, in his presence forever. And that's hard for us to understand too. So it goes all hand in hand. What percentage of your life do you think the average person works? Over your lifetime, what percentage of your time is going to be spent working?
50%.
60%,
We have a 50%, we have a 60%.
75%.
Well, how much of your week is spent at work? That might help you.
Oh, on the week?
Yeah.
So it's 5 days out of the 7, it's 8 hours out of the 24.
There you go. 8
Right.
hours out of the 24. So it is about a quarter of your life is spent at work, unless your work is home and it's kids and stuff, and then it might be higher. But if you assume it's 25% and you work for 50 years, now some people do that, that's 100,000 hours. That's crazy. So you want to make sure that what you're doing isn't a drudgery, isn't something that you don't want to get up and go and do. And you need to make sure that you see it as a ministry, as a mission field, and that you see it as you're doing it for God, which is what we're going to talk about next here. We're going to transition a little bit more about God's perspective on work. So in Genesis 2:15, and then in 3:17, God created work. What was the work that God gave to Adam and Eve? It was one of the first things he told them.
So the 2:15 says the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it.
All right, cultivate it, keep it, work it, take care of it. So the first job that man had was gardening. And God gave it to him right off the bat. That was before sin came into the world. After sin came into the world, that's 3:17. The same job existed for man, but it was harder now because of sin. 3:17 says, cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall grow for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. So same job, but now a lot harder because of sin entering the world. So God created work in the first place, and he saw that it was a good thing for man to have something to do with his hands. So let's look at God's perspective on work biblically. And there's 4 points to this, and I've got to get you your worksheet at some point, but we'll go through them. First one is that work is necessary. And we're going to look at 2 Thessalonians 3:10. This is a pretty strong verse.
Or even when we were with you, we gave you this rule: the one who is unwilling to work shall not eat. Okay.
Okay. If you will not work, neither will you eat.
Yeah.
That's what Paul says.
Yeah. It doesn't say the one who is unable to work. It
No.
says who is unwilling to work shall not eat.
That's right. If you're unable to work, we are told that we're supposed to take care of widows and orphans and the poor. But if it's an attitude that you're not willing to pick up something and do some kind of work, then Paul says that God's perspective is that You're not going to get a free lunch. Is that how our society's perspective?
Well,
I see one head shaking.
half of it has a different perspective than the other half.
Yeah, some people have a different perspective than that.
Mhm.
We'll leave it at that. All right, the second point, work develops character.
Yes.
What happens when you're working?
You you get feedback from other workers.
Mhm.
It's kind of like at your house, your parents raise you, but then when you go to work, there's other people that continue that education for you, the work ethics and
Mhm. Yes, there's education. You learn new skills. You learn to work with people. You
Mhm.
learn manual dexterity in some cases. You learn how to be diligent and keep at a job even if it's tough. You learn how to judge what should be done when. You learn a lot of things. So work develops your character. Third one, we should work for God. And that's what scripture says. So Colossians 3:23 and 24.
It says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving.
And that's hard to wrap our heads around. We're not serving the boss that we have or the workplace that we have. We're doing it for God. And that's why when I talk about work, when I'm praying for somebody, I usually talk about it, work as their ministry field, their mission, their ambassadors in their workplace, because all those things remind us that we're not just going there to work, we're going there to bring God into the workplace, to work for God. And the fourth one, God's perspective on work, there is equal dignity in all types of work. Scripture does not elevate any honest profession above another. In fact, Paul often says that slave and free and Roman and Greek and Jew, they're all equal. And in the early church, servants would be in the same iglesia, church, as the centurions or the wealthy business owners or whatever else. In church, there is no distinction, although some people want to try to make a distinction. But there is no difference. There's equal dignity in all types of work. God doesn't say you must work this job or you're not doing what I want you to do. All jobs are equal dignity. And then let's look at the Lord's responsibilities in work. What does God do for us in work? And when we use the word Lord, remember we're talking about Jesus as opposed to the Father. So what are the Lord's responsibilities in work? What does God do for us? First one, let's look at Exodus 36:1.
You're trying to tongue twist me. So Bezaleel, Oholiab, and every skilled person to whom the Lord has given skill and ability know how to carry out all the work of constructing the sanctuary are to do work just as the Lord has commanded.
All right, so where did they get their skill to perform this work? From God. So the first point of God's responsibility is he gives us the job skills that we need. He has given each of us unique skills and capabilities. So he gives us the skills. And then let's look at Genesis 39, 2-3, and think about what this tells us.
The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did,
Okay,
Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant, because I had to finish the sentence.
okay, that's fine. So what does this tell us about what God does for us at work?
He blesses us.
He blesses us, he gives us success, and he
Yes.
gives us something in the eyes of our masters or our bosses. What does he give us?
It says here that he gave our masters success.
Because of
So,
us,
so the place that we bring the blessings of the Lord.
right? We bring the
the
blessings of God
workplace.
into the workplace. Yes. So God gives us success. Our supervisors, we find favor in the eyes of our supervisors because they're seeing the success that's coming out of us being there. So God gives us our success. And then the third one is God controls our promotions. And there's 2 verses for this. Psalm 75, 6. And First Chronicles 29, 10-13.
Psalm 79 or 75?
75, 6.
75, 6. No one from the east or the west or from the desert can exalt themselves.
All right. In the Living Bible, it puts it a little plainer. It says, for promotion and power come from nowhere on earth, but only from God. All right. And First Chronicles 29, 10-13.
David praised the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly, saying, Praise be to you, Lord, the God of our father Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power, and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and give us strength. Now, our God, we give you thanks and we praise your glorious name.
All right. He has the power to exalt us. He has the strength to give us for work. He has the wisdom. He has everything. That's a passage that's well worth memorizing, or at least reading often, because it really praises God for all aspects. So the 3 responsibilities of God: he gives us our skills, our success, and our promotions. What are our responsibilities in work? We already talked a little bit about it. We should work hard. We read that we should work with all our might, with our hands. So Ecclesiastes 9:10, Proverbs 12. Sorry for the doggy outburst. So Ecclesiastes 9:10, Proverbs 12:27, Proverbs 10:4. These all talk about we should work hard. If somebody can find 2 Thessalonians 3:8 and Proverbs 18:9, we'll read those 2.
Second Thessalonians 3:8. Nor did we eat anyone's food without paying for it. On the contrary, we worked night and day, laboring and toiling, so that we would not be a burden to any of you.
Okay, and the other one was Proverbs 18:9.
One who is lack in his work is brother to one who destroys.
Okay. Both these scriptures and a bunch of others, we already know whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might, but these tell us that not only should we work hard, but we need to make sure that our level of work doesn't make people ever think that we're lazy and equate laziness with God, because we have a witness and people know we're Christians. And if we act lazy or our witness is sullied by our diligence in our work, then that's a reflection on God. Whether it should be or not, it is. And Proverbs 12:27 says, the precious possession of a man is diligence. And that is something we need to have in work. We need to be diligent and do the best job that we possibly can. And our second responsibility is that we should not overwork. Exodus 34:21. And also Proverbs 23:4. So it's 2 verses you can find.
Exodus 34:21.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
34.
6 days you shall labor, but on the seventh day you shall rest. Even during the plowing season and harvest, you must rest.
All right. Even in your busiest time of year, and that's what those times are, plowing and harvest for the person that's farming. Even those times, God says, take a rest. Proverbs 23:4.
Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness.
Yeah, we read it once before, didn't we? But it applies here too. Now, we have also 6 responsibilities as a godly employee. First one is absolute honesty. And the second one is faithfulness. And they both come to us from Daniel's example. If you go to Daniel 6:4, the other people that were ruling in his day were watching Daniel because he kept getting promoted, and it was part of God's plan. He kept getting promoted and getting put over them, and they didn't like it because he was getting stuff they wanted. So they were looking for ways to try to get him in trouble. And if we read Daniel 6:4, we'll see what they found.
It says at these, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent.
Okay, he wasn't corrupt and he was faithful in what he did. And those are responsibilities of a godly employee: absolute honesty and faithfulness. And then the third one is prayer. And this was what they went after Daniel for. When they couldn't find any corruption or dishonesty in him, they said, okay, the only thing we see is that Daniel prays to God and not to the king, puts God above kingdom and king 3 times a day. He spends praying. In verse 10 of chapter 6. Now when Daniel knew that the document was signed, they were, making it so that anybody that prays to somebody else was going to be thrown in the lion's den. He said, even after he knew it was signed, he continued to kneel on his knees 3 times a day and prayed, giving thanks to God as he had done previously. So prayer is another aspect of our responsibility as a godly employee. If we are praying for our attitudes, for our coworkers, for our bosses, for our workplace, not only does it make a difference in the workplace because of our own attitudes, but it also makes a difference for everybody else there. The fourth one is honoring our employers. This is 1 Peter 2:18. And you can replace servant with employees and master with employer and read it that way.
Peter 2:18. Employees, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your bosses, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh.
Or unreasonable. Yeah. Lisa's like, yeah, Peter says, even if you got a bad boss, be submissive to them, listen to them, do what they're asking you to do for the job. Obviously, don't go against what God says, but even if they're not good, treat them as a boss should be treated. So that's a godly employee. And part of that's not participating in gossip and maybe avoiding office politics, that kind of thing. The fifth one is honoring your fellow employees. And that comes right along with this last thing that we read and along with Daniel's stuff, don't try to put down somebody else. Honor them, pray for them. And the sixth one is share our faith. Later in Daniel 6, in verses 20 and 26, it talks about Darius, King Darius. The only way he ever knew anything about God was because Daniel shared it with him. And our very presence in the workplace, whether we're saying it in words or not, is sharing God if we have the proper attitude as an employee. So that is one of our responsibilities as a godly employee. So if you're not happy where you're at, think about what God's career path for you might be. What are the gifts he's given you? What is the passion? Like we already talked about. And we can also think about the parable of the 10 talents from Matthew 25, 14 to 30. What are some principles out of that parable that apply to work? Well, the first one is ability matters. People who use their abilities wisely will be rewarded. Remember the one that just took it and hid it and didn't put it at least in the bank so it could gain interest or invest it so it could grow more? Those are abilities. Those abilities matter. Don't just go hide it, but use your abilities wisely. Second one, God is not a socialist. Well, what do the socialists do? They give everyone the same thing. So everybody gets the same healthcare coverage. Everyone gets the same whatever. That's what the socialist idea of thing is. But God isn't a socialist. He doesn't give everyone the same things, but bases his gifts on ability and obedience. And so the parable of talents, the ones that used their abilities wisely got more. And the one that had that one that refused to use what he did have lost even that. So God's not a socialist. He's going to base his gifts on our obedience and using our abilities. Third one is hard work leads to promotion. There are rewards to a job well done. And that was obvious in that parable. The one that had 5 and gained 5 more got entrusted with a lot more. Fourth one, give 100%. When working on a project, don't give up too easily. Exhaust all the possibilities until it's finished. You know, stick with it. Don't go hide it and give up on it. And the fifth one is take some calculated risks. Sometimes you have to go out on a limb, take a few risks, at a chance for some calculated gain, whether that be helping out somebody else in your workplace, making a new connection, you know, maybe doing a job that you don't think you have the ability to do. Because the reality is, if you're in a job where you don't think you have all the skills to do it, that means you have to rely completely on God. And that is the best place to be. If you think you've got everything you need to do the job and it's all on you, then you kind of start leaving God out of the picture. So take some risks. Do things that you don't think you can do, but if God's leading you to do them, he's going to resource you with what you need to do them. So
Amen.
some questions to leave you with in this lesson. For who do you really work? Do you have the attitude that you're working for God? And how does that understanding alter your work performance and how you interact with others at work? And sort of another off the wall question, is it biblically permissible for a person to retire only to pursue a leisure life, to become a sluggard? What do you think?
Well, I think if you retired, it frees you more to use your gifts in the ministry,
Exactly.
because
Exactly.
we are limited by our daily lives and work to help others or
Mhm.
do God's work.
Exactly. Exactly. Every time that there's a need to go pick up something for food, I weigh the cost of leave from work to help go get it.
Yeah.
Thankfully, this week, the Secretary of Agriculture, this is the week that federal and state and local service is being celebrated. And so the Secretary of Agriculture gave all federal employees in Department of Agriculture 4 hours off this week. You know, we were granted it for yesterday afternoon, but it said in the message you could time shift it anytime you wanted to with your
Wow.
supervisor's permission. So I time shifted it from yesterday afternoon to this morning so I could go help pick up new food from a new food bank. And we loaded up the vehicle and it's pretty amazing stuff we got. And it was really important that Rajan and I went to do that shopping because we know what's going to go and what people need. So God
Yes,
provided
Lord.
4 hours for that.
Amen.
Didn't have to leave for that. So yeah, it's
Amen.
kind of cool. God provides. So I'm
Awesome.
going to end the recording here so that we can chat about any questions people might have.